Prime Minister, it is a pleasure to be here with you today. 9 months ago, you won a historic election here in Malaysia to become the 10th Prime Minister of the country. Congratulations. And 2 weeks ago, there was another set of elections that some said was going to be your first big test with your new administration. How do you feel the results went?
No, thank you, Alyson. We managed to sustain the level of support, particularly in the key states, the three economically thriving states, as opposed to the more rural hinterland that we lost to the more conservative Islamic Party. So I thought that is a clear signal that the government is stable, and we are here for the next 4 years till the general elections.
And that in and of itself is significant. As you know better than anybody, it's been a tumultuous past few years for Malaysia. Stability is very much needed. It's been a tumultuous path for you to be in the seat that you're in today, about 25 years in the making, about a decade of that spent in jail for things that you say you did not do, that would not be crimes, frankly, in other parts of the world. And you're here in the seat today. What from that experience has prepared you to be Prime Minister, and how did it change you as a person?
We have had some experience in the past, then the 25 years in and out of jail, that the learning curve, I think you become more mature, I should say patient, and saner in this world, full of insanity. And I think I've learned immensely about freedom, about patience, about economic policies, and I think I would like to therefore focus effectively how to contribute to this country and make it vibrant and great again.
And there were moments that you didn't feel like you would survive, and friends even told you, why would you go back into government? You might be thrown back in jail. It could be disastrous. Why? Why in that moment did you decide, I'm gonna give this another shot and I'm gonna go be Prime Minister?
It's interesting because I had a long conversation after I was released at the invitation of Nelson Mandela. We were talking about how mad or quite insane we are, or crazy. So we reached a consensus. We were not insane, but certainly we're quite crazy, because we believe, we have a sense of conviction, believe what's best for our people, for our country, and the country deserves better. Essentially, that I think propel us to work harder and be really determined in the face of adversities. I'm not exaggerating, it was a tough period. It's not just for me, but I think my wife, my family, my colleagues suffered immensely too. But after all this, this is probably part of the tribulation one to accept, because we are talking about affecting change. I'm against a system with endemic corruption, with authoritarian traits. So it's not going to be easy feat. And you accept the fact that you are actually trying to change the system, how things should be different. Naturally, it would be at the expense of those ruling clique or elite. And but now at least we can see there's ray of hope for the country. There is stability, there's clarity in economic policy, and a general acceptance by the general public that in order to evolve as a successful country, we must affect real change and reform in this country.
And as you mentioned, and you've said before, corruption has been endemic to this country, and a big opening to allow you to be in the Prime Minister seat today was the 1MDB scandal that prior administrations had been caught up with, and that you're now trying to settle with Goldman still. How much of a setback for Malaysia do you feel that incident was, and how do you plan to get the money back from Goldman?
Well, in a sense, it was a major setback, because the perception always had been negative. I was in New York some years back, and the only thing they ask is about Malaysia and 1MDB, or Malaysia essentially a very corrupt country. So we have to really tell them, look, we have a different set of leaders, we have a different set of policies, and we are quite determined to change and rid the country of corruption. And I should say, given just about more than 8 months, they were quite successful. No negotiated tenders, which has been the practice. No issue of commissions through procurements of military equipment from foreign countries. But this still can be done, but you have to be really tough and at times quite unpopular. But if there are clear signs or determination and policies follow through, I think generally the international community can accept. They know, they follow. It's just not occasional views at the media. I mean, they do analyze, they see things. And when they come in, they see how we work. That is why in the last, say, 3-4 months, you can see suddenly there's mushrooming of investments from United States, from Europe, and from China. Huge numbers coming in. And they see there's a change, ease of doing business, clarity of policy, and transparent in terms of our implementation.
So I want to dig into that a bit more. You've outlined a big plan for Malaysia over the next 10 years, your Madani Economy. It has a number of parts to it. But the overall picture, in a recent speech, you said, the fact is we're caught in a vicious cycle of high costs, low wages, low profits, and a lack of competitiveness. Where do you start? What steps do you need to make today to reach the ambitious goals you have for Malaysia in the next 10 years?
First, there must be clarity in the policy. You see, for example, we are talking about the industrial master plan. Must it be the old approach of sectoral or mission approach? Do you have to see Malaysia as one entity or geographically different? I mean, these issues will be addressed. If there's clarity and then ease of doing business, in the last few months, I don't find difficulty in getting investors to come in. And I see no agents, no commissions, and you get to the key personnel, particular agency, and we will facilitate the approvals. So if that can happen, then naturally the issue we talk about, wage, low productivity, will be resolved. Of course, it will take time and effort. You ask most of these companies, American companies, from the IT companies, from say Dell in the past, or Elon Musk the present, or the Geelys, the Rongshan in China, all of them, almost without exception, would say that we have first-class professionals and engineers. What we lack is probably the issue of governance, issue of clarity, and issue of ease of doing business. So it is partly the responsibility of the authorities, of the government, to make the necessary changes, accelerate the process of approvals, at the same time to give the additional niche training to what is being required in that area that we are still deemed to be rather lacking.
A big win was Elon Musk committing to doing quite a bit here with Tesla, Starlink. Those negotiations were relatively, it seemed fast. I mean, Indonesia had been courting Musk for a long time, and yet he chose Malaysia. What did you say to Musk? How did you get that done? And was it just great terms?
Well, I was then say pleased that he, as much as I know about him, he knows a bit about me. So I said, look, I've suffered immensely in the process. Now I'm given the opportunity. I'm in business. I want to affect the change, and I want to do it now. And whatever is necessary will be done. I love my country, and I think it has huge potential and capacity. And I make it rather clear and blunt to him to say that he does not need to worry about all the other nitty-gritties, bureaucratic encumbrances that he may face in dealing with some other countries. So I thought that may be one issue. But the other thing is that he knows the history of this country. And even in SpaceX, he has 3 major companies engaging in the operations of SpaceMart in terms of the spare parts. So he can gauge our potential, what was lacking then is a clear policy and commitment by the leadership. And we have complemented that. I mean, of course, I'm exceedingly pleased they could come up with a very fast decision and set up the regional office here.
And are there other deals like this in the works? I assume you're talking to many Western companies.
Yes, Infineon, for example, came in with a decision about a month and a half ago by the board, 5 billion euros to expand in Malaysia. And they're the biggest single investment outside Germany. And then Geely from China, they comes in and they're starting an automobile city in this state, in this province, in the south of this province, which is ongoing. They have brought out about 1,000 of the Chinese professionals in the operations already. And they know how, it's just not me alone, I mean, the whole system, I've got the team to say, look, once we are committed, we cannot give an impression that we are laid back or, we're not doing anything or whatever is necessary to make sure that this process goes at a fast pace.
So there's a bit of a dilemma, I suppose. If part of the goal is to get more foreign companies to come into Malaysia, but then China is also a big partner, and of course China and the US are not quite getting along. How do you plan to position Malaysia when you're sandwiched between the two and you need both?
Thus far, we don't have that much of a problem. We may engage and we maintain China as a major player in terms of investments, in terms of neighborly relations, trade. Is a major player. And I explained to my colleagues in the States, look, it's an important neighbor. It's not a zero-sum game as far as we're concerned. And States have a long tradition of cultivating friendship for decades. And also they know the track record of our country. I mean, some of the big major players have been here, even the traditional ones like Motorola, Intel in the past, and they know our capacity. And I think we should then utilize this to our advantage. We are a small country. We are not here to try broker a deal between the United States and China. We know that. And they know. We make it very clear. I mean, I have engagement with Blinken and Kerry recently. And of course, with Xi Jinping and Li Qiang in China, and we continue to communicate. But we make it very clear our priorities and what is of the imperative in this country, in Malaysia.
Another tenet of the Madani economy is getting more women in the workforce. You have a goal of getting about 60% participation. How do you plan to do that? Is it overhauling education? Is it systemic? How are you going to improve those numbers?
It is a clear, I should say, beyond moral suasion, is a clear policy against any form of subvert discrimination that happens to be taking place. For example, in universities, at least we have more than 50% women, female students. There's no reason why they cannot be accommodated. Of course, I'm a bit biased. I have 6 children, 5 girls.
And a very powerful wife.
Yeah, and a powerful wife. So, but I think, to be fair, it will be of immense help to the country. This quota of people has not been fully utilized. Many brilliant have professional qualifications and not given the opportunity. So there must be a clear policy to encourage it in politics, in management, in the private sector, and more so in the government service.
What about within your own administration? There's only a few women. Do you have plans for more?
Yes, but of course, in the cabinet, we started off now relatively smaller, although in terms of the historic antecedents, it's quite prominent and given key positions. In the past, women affairs and welfare, education, health, women, which to me is very, very key. One of the two key ministries are held by women. But I agree, I concede the fact that we need to then expose and give opportunity to more women, not only in the political leadership, but also in the professional, managerial positions.
So quite a bit to do. As we said at the beginning, you've been 25 years in waiting for this, and now is your time to take Malaysia where you want it to go. What do you worry about failure? What does failure look like to you now that you have this seat?
It's interesting, Alyson. I didn't actually think a bit too much about possibility of failures. I think we are here. We have failed in the past, and we have learned and have the humility to acknowledge our limitations in the past. And I think now is the time for us to execute. And if you do the right thing, and you mean well, and you know what's rotten about the system, you have to correct them, I think there's no reason, no cause to be unduly worried about the possibility of failure.
And what about your legacy? What do you want your legacy to be when people remember you in this position? And what do you want global leaders to think of Malaysia now?
Again, I would reiterate the same point. I mean, I'm not too concerned about that. But I think what's important is you do your best. And this country has this immense capacity to emerge as a viable, successful, developing economy or emerging economy. And I think we should just focus on that. And I'm quite realistic. I'm not crazy. Although as I've said earlier that we with Mandela do acknowledge that both of us quite crazy, but I'm quite realistic to say that the capacity is huge, enormous. We have been here say 8 months, but I think effectively just 6 months, and you can see the trend. The focus, the interests of the general public, the general affinity, discipline among the public, the interest by foreign investors, and even on general issue of governance. I mean, there is a shift, and I think if we can continue and sustain this effort, we can strive.
Well, thank you so much for your time.